To me, cracking the code is about creating an environment where diversity and equality are by default and not something we have to continually have conversations about to make small progress on. Particularly in Japan, gender bias is still the norm, and it would be great to get to a place where a woman in management doesn't stand out. There has definitely been progress recently, but it is still too slow, so look forward to having more open conversations to expedite change.
Innovation is a driver of change. We have all witnessed how technologies accelerate the digital disruption during the pandemic. Our world is now borderless. However, have we really embraced the inclusive digital technologies to bring more financial inclusions, to bring the equal access to education and opportunities for women and girls all around the world, to serve more of the underserved and the unserved populations?
Cracking the code for equality is pivotal to creating and promoting diversity. Without difference, there can be no innovation, and without innovation, there can be no growth. Let's set the stepping stones in place for growth by creating diversity.
Conversations are key to giving birth to actions that can change the way things are. So where does your action come from? It comes from within. It's in you. As an individual, I encourage you to find positive ways to be heard. Find your voice. Most of all, believe in yourself and your ability to contribute and influence ideas and the way things can change for the better for the future.
Encourage, support, rally, champion. Allies these days play such an incredible part for the advancement of women empowerment. Embrace equity can actually bring equality much closer than we think. Anyone, anywhere, you get to play a part.
The key to unlocking equality through innovation is simple. We need to recognize the work to be done and then build without bias. By unleashing the potential of women entrepreneurs, investors, and leaders, we can unlock new ideas, products, and services that benefit us all. And yes, that includes women and girls.
Today, we celebrate the achievements and incredible contributions that women have made in our society and industry. Let's recommit ourselves to cracking the code to create greater gender equality and a more equitable world where everyone has equal opportunities.
I look forward to our sharing our knowledge, collaborate, support each other. There is no boundaries for us to create more opportunities and lead to innovations. It's another means for us to pay it forward.
Well, I think cracking the code means breaking down social norms so that we can enable true gender equality and we can ensure that there is always diversity of thinking at the table. That way, it will lead to a lot more innovation, and the innovations that we make in how we run society can enable true gender equality.
Seek out the veteran, the legacy person that might have 25 years of a viewpoint, might be a little entrenched, but has the wisdom of the past. And then seek out the folks that have a new perspective, the new person, the younger person, the person from the outside. Don't always bring in inside people, bring in outside people. And again, it's not about, ethnicity or race, or it's about getting the job done and including the right people to get the job done.
Fantastic. So with that, I would like to welcome you all to the Emerging Payments Association Asia and Meet Her She Knows Payments International Women's Day 2023, where we're going to talk about cracking the code, innovation for a gender equal future. So I'm Camilla Bullock. I have the pleasure to lead the Emerging Payments Association Asia and the Meet Her She Knows Payments project within. And I think most people have had time to join us now. So we'll see. Yeah, we still will have some few more people coming and joining as we go. This will be an interactive session today. So you're going to meet some of the speakers on the video and some of those that didn't have time to make videos today. But first of all, I would like to say thank you to you, because you all are part of our community and you are helping us to crack the code. Because in 2020, we launched Meet Her, She Knows project out of a necessity, because we didn't know enough female thought leaders to include in the discussion and include in our events. So we lacked the diversity was needed to drive the innovative agenda that we're having. We couldn't have done that without you, and we can't do it going forwards either. So a big thank you for that, and thank you for joining us here today. And when we look at about diversity, I want to call it out also that gender is definitely not the only aspect, but it's still today is the biggest underrepresented group, and hence we think it's so important to start there. And I count myself very lucky. I, on a day-to-day, get to work with some of the most amazing payments leader globally, many of them who I call my mentors and my friends. And I also have, many of them are also women, and many of them you will meet here today. And we're going to speak to each individual woman who's on this panel for about like 2-3 minutes. I'll ask them some questions, you'll hear from them, but then we'll get the chance to meet you. So we'll come to the end of this slightly panel session discussion, and then we're going to go out in the tables where you saw or you joined. Then sit down at a table and you will meet one of those amazing women who are either on our advisory board or on our ambassador group. And followed by that, we'll call them all back and we'll hear what you told them and what you discussed about at that table. So first, I would actually like to call for a celebration also, because, now I can't see everybody on stage, because one of the women today has been called out to be one of the most influential women globally in payments. So a big call out to Marianne Francis, who got this nomination by the Bankers Association today. She has fallen off the stage though, so I'm calling her back here. So she will be back in a session. So all speakers, if you could click on the backstage so you can join us here, and then I'll come to you one by one. So I think I have Marianne with me here now.
You do, and here I am. Hi.
Fantastic, Marianne. So
thank you.
What do you think about cracking the code? What have you seen for good examples, and what does it mean to you?
It's such a diverse topic. It's interesting because I have worked for American companies, European companies, and Indian companies, and it really is just asking for the best people to be at the table. Period. Like, my number one message to all of us is just never lower your bar. And if you keep your bar at a level of this is what I need to achieve and what I need to accomplish, we just shouldn't care who's at the table. But we have to also proactively make sure that we don't stay in our bubble, that we don't just, call on the internal people that have been here 100 years or exclude the people that we don't know, or somebody that's in a different, venue or location. That's the fun. I think that we in this space have an opportunity to have ridiculously diverse conversations, agree to disagree. But at the end of the day, we all have a job to do, and the job isn't bring 5 women and 5 ethnicities and 5, right? The job is to get the job done. So find the best people. And if you can bring in that diversity, you're guaranteed a better result. That doesn't mean they follow all the way through. Doesn't mean they do everything. It just means you've collected a really, rainbow colored set of opinions that allows you as the leader to digest it and take it down into the ultimate solution.
Thank you for that. So you're always calling out, watch out for the convenience factor when people are grabbing the people they know from before and forgetting about the value in having the diverse table. I'm going to turn to Natalie. So Natalie is based in Japan. And what did you see within your organization? You work both in big organization, medium, and now in a smaller one. how do you work for this on a day-to-day basis on cracking the code?
Yeah, so one of the reasons I guess I joined Infocurian is actually to work on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I was the first female director in the company. And I think in particular in the Japanese like fintech space, like both fin and tech are very male dominated, particularly in management. So even if we wanted to hire 50% women across the board, which is obviously very difficult, like the talent pool isn't there, but it looks like the talent pool isn't there. And like I think one of the things is that a lot of women choose to hold themselves back. They don't take risks. Like it goes in both directions. Like managers don't necessarily I think ask women to take promotions, but the women also don't always voice their desire to do so. And part of the reason is because of the working hours, the working culture. It looks very, very difficult. And so I think like one of my jobs right now is becoming an example of a woman who has a 3-year-old child, has family time blocked on her schedule from 5:30 in the afternoon. But when I need to be in a meeting, I work with my husband because we have a 50-50 partnership for him to take care of my daughter so that I can be involved when I need to. And I think just one, leading by example, but two, allowing women to find their own voices and to speak out a little bit more about what they want and what they think and how things should be. And I think in Japan, it's still a very, I guess, top-down business culture. And we're obviously trying to change that. And we're a relatively flat organization, but it's something that can't be changed overnight. So it's a continuous work in progress.
They're actually mentioning something that I first did in my video that I recorded, and it's really down to that equity and leveling up. How could women live in? Because I talked about childcare, which has been a huge part in my chance in leaning into opportunities. So on that note, I'm going to turn to Leanne Bradley, who also has school-age kids and have been juggling a really very senior role and is more working in a smaller company now. What do you see the difference in what a big company can do and a smaller company can do and what's working?
Thanks, Camilla. Yeah, I've had experience at both now. And I guess some of the big challenges in a bigger company is while a lot of companies are really embracing flexibility, what I came to learn is that working part-time becomes quite a bit of pressure for the person that's running teams and working part-time, because companies need to put in the support structure to ensure that your teams are supported when you're not there. So I'm also probably a big advocate for executive job sharing, which there's not enough of in the industry, because you want to do the best job for the corporate, but if you're not there all the time and you want to be there for your family, you're almost cheating both sides of the family and the business. So I think job sharing is an innovation that needs to be looked at a lot more in the financial services industry that I've worked in. Obviously, you're owning your own company, running your own business, you have a lot more flexibility in terms of when you can work, how you work, and a lot more control as to how you approach work. So it's definitely still a massive balance to juggle family and work, but being master of your own destiny definitely gives you that flexibility. But it's not to say that you can't do it in the corporate world. There just needs to be changes in, I guess, attitudes around how people can approach those executive roles and how corporates can embrace the diversity of thinking that may come with jobs sharing, as an example. I mean, the other thing that I think is fabulous in Sweden is that some industries there have embraced the 6-hour day. And that is all about juggling both the needs of your corporate responsibilities as well as your family needs. And that's not just for women, that's for women and men. And I think it's all about giving both men and women that flexibility.
Fantastic, thank you. And it is interesting that, because I also think we all have to be aware of there is probably not a balance. It's just the constant balancing. Some days I do it well, other ways I really don't do it very well at all. So we're going to hear from anybody can join all those ladies' tables when we've gone through and heard from all of them. So Finette, based in Hong Kong, what is good examples, both from your early career and also towards now, because when you first joined the banking world and what you see more happening in big organizations and small organizations now in helping to enable diversity and equality?
It's funny when I'm hearing you guys, talking about the challenges, excuse me, of childcare, etc. And I do agree. I think currently, I do find it more difficult. Echoing what Leanne was saying about the more executive position for job share, that is definitely a very big challenge here. However, for I think a lot of the number of Asian countries like Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, we do have the luxury, I must admit, for women to have childcare support. We have domestic helpers, right? That leaves you to take care of the ironing, cooking, cleaning, taking care of your, taking the kids to school, etc. So you do have that flexibility and very competitive to work within an environment which is, right now still a bit more male dominated, but I am glad to see there are a lot more and more women. Now, my historical background has been banking operations, overseeing payments, but there are a lot of women in this field, at least in Hong Kong, which I do find that's a really good privilege. But however, on the fintech, where it's more of the future innovations, I still see there should be a lot more women in that field.
Fantastic. Thank you, Fannette, for sharing those thoughts. And you see, I'm starting to get them all on stage now. It's taking me a little bit. Every time it's a different technical challenge when we do this. Katie. So Katie is based in Singapore, but has also worked in US, so can again compare to markets. And I'm going to ask you, what would you like to see more of? What are ideas that do you think that, how about if we try this?
Yeah, thanks, Camilla. It's a good question, and lovely to see familiar and new faces on here. I think, it's interesting because I think we're in a really important moment in the space of payments technology, and I think organizations are, obviously there's a lot going on looking at different operating models, and I'm concerned candidly that a lot of the strides that we've made in identifying and speaking truth to the need for diversity and inclusion is being perceived in this moment, in this era, as fluff, as an unnecessary dialogue. And rather than embrace the strides that we've made and continue to lean into that and really embed DEI into culture, we're sort of going in a different direction. I do think that there's a really interesting balance between the need to speak our truths, to talk about things like, balancing childcare with executive positions, and the progress that we still need to make across the board in diversity, not just gender equity. But I also think that we should take it on ourselves to not make this just a day, obviously, and to really embed a lot of the themes that we discuss when we have the pulpit or the microphone into our day-to-day work. And I obviously people do that, but I think that the show not tell will hopefully keep the momentum that we've worked so hard for. But it's interesting, for some reason this year I'm inspired, I'm motivated. I'm also a little bit nervous about some of the trends that we're seeing. So I think it's a really important discussion that we're having.
It's just like when things goes faster and faster, it is a time commitment to make this happen. And it's also, with time comes resources. So I hear you and I can see that worry. So it's really important to speak about the successes that happens when we have diversity in the room. Good, we'll see. And then we have Jan. There we go, Jan McGrath. When so far, now we had a few different views from different countries. What do you feel like this also? Please think about this. This is what I would like to draw attention to in this conversation. I make it harder and harder for each of you. I do. I am aware of it.
Yeah. What would I like to draw attention to in this conversation? For me, I'm at the other end of my career, so not as young as some people on here. So I've lived through banking, like Fanette in the old banking world with a bunch of old blokes with ties on and telling us women what we would and wouldn't do. So I've lived through that inequality, and I think whilst we've made progress, we've still got a long way to go. But some of that sits with us and our belief in ourselves. As I said in my video, I think I've had a great career. I've worked in many, many countries all over the world. I've never been robbed of an opportunity because, as Marianne said, if you're right for the job, then believe in it and go for it. And I've been lucky enough to work with people who believed that I had the right skills, the right knowledge, and could fit in with a team. I've been in countries where I've been the minority, where nobody spoke English. I've worked in Japan. I've worked in Chile. I don't speak any of those languages. I've lived in Hong Kong, where I definitely was the minority. So I know what it feels like to be the minority, but I've never once believed that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. So I think it's got to do with my upbringing, perhaps my mum, my sisters, I don't really know. But I think if you believe in yourself and you've got to be honest with yourself, if I got the skills, if I haven't, go get them. You know, like I did a master's degree later in life. I think anything's possible if you want to do it. Just go and do it and believe in yourself. And that's what I would tell my younger self, just keep going.
I think that is a massive message, because in these small groups, in an audience, I very rarely actually do believe in myself. But preparation is king. And if I don't do it, like, how bad can it go? I'm sure that I try to fall forwards, and it sort of works. Like, your mistakes, other people forget, and then you just make sure that you speak about your successes, and things go fairly well. So that's I definitely, and your video talked to me, so thank you for that. We then are going to turn to May. And May this year turned into a C title, CIO for AP+. And I think that is something to celebrate, because when we look, a lot of people and a lot of women have really senior positions. But when you get that C in front of your name, that is actually one for all of us to be called. So congratulations, May. And
thank you. I feel very humble. Thank you.
What has helped you, and what have given you equity for the conversations and to land where you are? Like, any tricks on other people that helped you to break the code?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to acknowledge everyone that have spoken. I actually been nodding because I do agree, and I think there's some commonalities there. But I think back to your question, I will just share a quick story of how I transform myself. So I'm always a go-getter. I know what capability. I have to constantly prove myself through my whole career to let people know that what is capable of. And then when I was approaching 40, and I had this realization of like, oh my God, I'm midlife crisis. Like, what have I done? What is my legacy that I can live with? Then I left a top job from running the technology for a bank to having my own startup. And that was a transformation of overnight. I have this glossy business card to next day. I had no business card. All I had was May Lam. And that was the one that really transformed me to understand who I am, but more importantly, who I'm not. And through this transformation journey, to constantly to back myself, surround myself with the great and brightest people, whether they are female or male, and then understanding what is my personal mantra. And I hold those to the core of my values. So I can share with you today that my personal mantra is that dare to compete, have a grateful heart, and pay it forward. And everything I do is about these three things. And yes, that's the technology, that's the innovation of that also aligned to that value. But when you make it, think about how can you help the others to bring them up. And in my career, I have to sadly to say that the people that actually be the hurdle or blocker, not necessarily men. And it was women as well. So that now that we are all powerful women in the powerful seat, that what is our duties and how can we bring us not be the minority? And that's I think there's the equity side of it.
equality is the goal and equity is the mean to get to it. And I'm actually posing the question of what is our role now that to bring more of the similar of us to become the majority.
Fantastic, thank you. So we're going to bring that question out to the table, but we're going to hear from one more voice here, and it is Linda, who's my partner in crime, I was almost say. So Linda is helping me to create the Meet Her She Knows payments area, and is also working CMO and head of strategy at EPA. So Linda also, as there might be other Swedes on the call, but as another Swede that it come from, but I sometimes we echo that Sweden is a very equal country. Sometimes I think it's not as equal as it seems when you first look at the surface. But what have you seen that is really good examples on cracking the code for equal and specifically for creating innovation? Oh, and we have Monica also, sorry. Monica. Linda first, and then we go to Monica.
Thanks, Camilla. Well, for me, being just first of all started off doing engineering, which is I've always been a minority in all of my professions, worked with technology, R&D, innovation. So I've always been a minority myself. I never really experienced any sort of issues with that, working with guys. And I think May mentioned in her speak that sometimes it can be women. I actually experienced most of the barriers when I had female bosses than anything else, which is quite sad, isn't it? So I mean, for me, I've always worked well with guys, but I think as women need to be quite conscious of how you can help other women, especially in middle management, before you leap up into an executive role, because that's where it really hurts you. When I look back at my career, when I was working at Westpac, you have to pick up kids, you still have loads of work to do, but you can't really afford to hire help with cleaning and pickups. You kind of have to do it all. Once you go into the executive level, you have money, you can buy more services, and that helps you in your career. And also with confidence as well. I think I always like to mentor people that work with me. I love working with younger people and help them out, help your peers out. I think creating that sistership is quite important. Blokes always have that, blokiness. Let's go watch a ball game, or, they have that kind of thing. Whereas a lot of females I see working in the big corporate, they're sort of like stressing, doing their job, then they're off to go home. So I think that can be a potential miss on that additional connection that could lead to a promotion later on. But for me, groundbreaking innovations are obviously born not out of consensus. It's born out of different mindset and wild discussions, and often, criticized ideas. So I think cherish the diversity of thought and seek it out.
Yep, well said. Thank you for that. Just going to jump to Monica because cautious of time that we want to hear from our audience also. So there we go. Monica. So Monica is all roads leads to Monica if you speak about a female thought leader in India. And that is quite an amazing task because there is a lot of amazing women in India. Monica, so you worked a lot in like core tech with a lot of male teams. So what have you done, and what do you feel is the thing that could actually crash the ceiling for women that hasn't come to the top yet, not to the C-level?
So, Camilla, I've been thinking a lot more about this, and I'm going to follow on what May said. I think it becomes difficult for women to consider themselves to have an identity outside of their family, home, and then their jobs. And the self-belief is what is missing mostly in middle management, which is why I'm mentoring a lot of girls or ladies who have hit middle management and then are falling off. And the main reasons is home duties and a lot of lack of self-belief in themselves, as well as a lot of office politics and being able to manage. I have to say that this is something that only we can work on for ourselves. I understand everything has been said, bad women bosses, bad male bosses, and a lot of other things, but ultimately we have to push through. And specifically speaking about the Indian context and also Asians, we tend to generally be a lot very different than other people, especially women across the world. And it really comes back to us to have the self belief and be more resilient than other men in the room. It's like when you're pushing through, you just have to forget that men will see you differently, because yes, they do see you differently. The idea of leadership for them is very different. It's very gendered. We have to break through all of those biases, but it's an inherent belief that we've been conditioned, and you cannot undo that. But then you can always have people who believe in you and can help you. And I think that's where we are lacking the most, which is why I have so much respect and support for you and all that you're doing, because it takes for somebody to recognize that there is some enablement that is needed. And enablement does not mean that you provide an unequal playing field, but you need to be able to recognize what's happening. Now, I'll give you a very specific example which will draw this to the core of our discussion, which is having gendered policies for work from home because women need it. I think these kind of discussions happen in Asia because women take care of all the home duties. I think it's important, especially in tech. Males are also doing a lot of the work, and we need to have work life integration. And this is where leaders, and May has mentioned this earlier, Jan, I think, has also mentioned it. You need to understand that while there will be diversity in the room, you need to bring these diverse voices, but make it equal for everybody, or at least make sure that women don't keep getting that treatment, because the more they feel it, the more they feel obliged to be able to perform to the role and the expectation. I think that's the only thing I'll say specifically about Asians.